place in America is more haunted than this place. This is the old graveyard in Ackworth, New Hampshire. 13 trees surround the yard, and the roots of these trees go deep into the soil and entwine around the dead. And so a man becomes a tree. You can feel the evil here. Welcome to Halloween in the time of the COVID virus. The oddity is that this year is the very year everyone is required to wear a mask, and this is the only year that Halloween has ever been canceled. In this spirit, I wear the mask of a bird. The bird mask was the regalia for doctors in Europe in the 1600s. It was protection for their lungs. Bubonic plague, the Black Death, was thought to have been spread by a miasma, that is putrid air. So the bird mask was worn for the same reason we wear surgical masks today. But the beak of the mask was packed with herbs and spices and dried flowers, so the doctor could not smell death. Weir's 1888 town history has an entire section, 6 whole pages devoted to witchcraft in that town. Regarding witches, historian William Little wrote in the history that Satan furnished his witch with a bridle, which put upon anything animate or inanimate, made a steed of it, and that steed could fly swift as a sunbeam. And with this steed, witches could ride in at a keyhole or walk upside down on the ceiling. A witch could be in 2 places at once, and could take the form of a black cat. They could overturn loads of hay, make the winds blow, the lightning flash. Now, Sarah Dolby was a witch. And the town history tells us that she rather liked her reputation. For a while, Sarah lived with Ezekiel Kimball on a farm east of Mount William. She was a middle-aged woman, not unattractive, though she had mad eyes, and she spoke her mind about stuff. Speaking one's mind was the reason Zeke Kimball finally moved out. Then there was Uncle Tristram Johnson. He was a farmer who lived on Barnard Hill there in Ware. Tristram married twice, had 10 children with his first wife, Rhoda. His second wife, Mary, who had been a widow, died only 3 years after he married her. The time Tristram was 65. Now, here's what the town history says. It says, Uncle Tristram Johnson used to say that she, witch Sarah Dolby, would come to his house at night and change him into a horse and ride him for long hours. In the morning, he would be so tired that he could hardly rise. Sarah went to Mr. Johnson's house one very cold day, sat down close to the fire in a large old-fashioned fireplace to warm herself. Uncle Tristram put a needle in the back of the chair, and it pinned her to the spot, and then he piled on wood in the fireplace, and when the woman was literally roasting, he would say, sit still, Aunt Sarah. Warm yourself as long as you wish." Then he removed the needle. Aunt Sarah then jumped up. "Must be going," she said, and she vanished, and she never rode Tristram Johnson again. Or so he said. Which Sarah Dolby afterwards moved into a shack, took her meals at the factory boarding house. She told fortunes for a living. She was buried in the Center Square Cemetery. The head part of the grave sank in. It's said that this indentation was when her spirit came out of the grave to roam about, and to this day her ghost in the form of a black cat has been seen many times. The thing that amazes me most, though, is that such a story as this was written way back in 1888 and published in a serious work like the town history. The funeral was to be the next day. Aunt Phoebe Lawrence was in her coffin. She was in the side room of the church there in Hinsdale. Aunt Phoebe had had a tough time of it in the end. She did not look good. She had asked her sister, Emma, to please have a closed casket service, and so it was. Aunt Phoebe was 97 years old when she passed. She had few contemporaries to attend the funeral, just her sisters, brother, friends of her children, generally people from the hospice, Meals on Wheels. Nieces and nephews and grandnieces and nephews had arrived. By 11 that night, everybody had left the church to get a night's sleep. The funeral was the next day. But 3 of the younger teenage boys had dodged their parents and had gone off. Willie Simpson, who lived there in Hinsdale, had stolen beers from the fridge, and the boys ended up in the churchyard passing the cans around. George Thurston from Errol was there. Eddie Lawrence, who lived in Manchester. Willie, George, and Eddie. They'd known each other their whole lives. Met every Thanksgiving for a week in the summer, weddings, anniversaries. 3 lads had parents that were, well, permissive, and so the boys were impulsive and they were rash. When they got together, it always meant trouble. About midnight, Willie went over to the back door of the church and found it unlocked. So the guys went in, didn't turn on any lights. They didn't want to attract anyone's attention. And there was a moon. They went down the hall to the room that had Aunt Phoebe, stood around her casket. Eddie looked at Willie over the top of the coffin. "I dare you," he said. Willie didn't hesitate. He lifted the upper part of the cover. It was empty. "Whoa," Eddie said, "she's gone." "We got to get out of here," George said. I don't like this." Wait, Eddie said, and using his cell phone as a flashlight. "Look," he said. And way down at the bottom of the casket, there was Aunt Phoebe. She was so small, the white rayon lining had closed around her. She was thin. She looked very dead, gray, no mortician's makeup. "I'll give you $50 if you'll get in there with her," Eddie said. "What?" George said. He was scared as it was. This was horror. $50, Eddie said. He took out a wad of bills. Clearly he had $50. "Heck," he said, "I'll give you $100. "Give me that," Willie said. He grabbed the wad of money from Eddie. He then opened the bottom half of the box. Willie then pulled over a folding chair and he stood on it and put his leg over the edge of the casket and down beside the body, the other leg in the casket, and it rocked suddenly to one side, and Eddie and George rushed up to steady it, holding onto the edges of the coffin like it was a bathtub full of hot water. Willie lowered himself so that he was kinda to the side of the corpse. "Take a picture," he said. But he didn't have to say it because Eddie already had his cell phone out. The flash went off. "Got it," Eddie said. And Willie got out of the casket and they closed the top. Willie and Eddie were smiling. But George was not smiling. In fact, he was shaking. Willie in disgust said, "What a little twerp. We should put you in the coffin just to get you some backbone." And Eddie smiled to himself. And then Eddie and Willie took hold of George by the lapel of his jacket and they pulled him over to the coffin. "Get away from me," George yelled. "You guys are sick," he said. He pulled himself away and he ran out of the church. Next day, before the funeral, the guys were in the men's room of the church. Eddie took his cell phone out. Want to see the picture? 3 guys gathered around the cell phone. Eddie brought up the image. "Geez, you look scared," he told Willie. "Nah, I wasn't scared. Well, I was scared of that. I was scared the casket would fall over." But George was not smiling. George was pale and shaking again. And he started to moan. Oh. "What's the matter with Sissy boy?" Willie said. "Mummy not here to hold your hand?" George was now pointing at the picture. "Aunt Phoebe," he said. Her eyes are open. She's looking at us." Eddie squeezed his finger to make the phone image larger. Sure enough, Aunt Phoebe's eyes were open and focused. She still looked dead, but she also looked like an accusing witch. or a devil. And George ran to the family car and sat there and did not go to the funeral in the church. And to the day he died, George would wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. If somebody from behind touched him, he would wince and jump. As for Eddie and Willie, well, they'd be just fine the rest of their lives. And when they met, they'd always have a few and relive that night in the church when they took that photo with Aunt Phoebe, and the morning after when they photoshopped it. This stone tells us of the most notable grave robbery to occur in the Granite State. This is the spot where the body of Bezaleel Beckworth was stolen from his grave. This place is notorious because this man actually died on Halloween, October 31st, 1824. He was 43 years old, the tax collector here in Ackworth, New Hampshire. People knew him and they loved him. But the medical schools at Dartmouth and Castleton, Vermont needed corpses for dissection. But nobody wanted the body of their loved ones to undergo such treatment. The medical schools were in dire need, so much so that they would pay cash money with no questions asked if offered a fresh body for dissection. A young corpse could command as much as $50, which was almost as much cash money as a farmer could save in a year. All over Maine and Vermont, cemeteries were plundered for bodies and taken to the Dartmouth Medical School, and Castleton, Vermont was the place that stolen corpses were taken from New Hampshire and northern New York. You see, the farther away from the grave robbery itself, the better, if you catch my drift. The robber was just one man here. James Wilson Jr. lived on a farm. They knew it was Jim Wilson who stole Beckworth because he was arrested in Castleton the day after the theft, drunk as a deacon, and people here in town knew Jim never had enough money to get drunk anywhere. I would think also that perhaps he needed the booze to live with himself, considering what he'd done. But they never found the body, and so Jim Wilson never went to trial. Later, this large black stone was erected to the dead man's memory. It reads, "This stone tells the death of Bezaleel Beckworth, not where his body lies. He died October 31st, 1824, age 43, the 13th night after his body was stolen from the grave. Not twice bereaved the mourner cries, my friend is dead, his body gone. God's act is just, my heart replies. Forgive, O God, what man has done." Erected by the friends of the deceased in Ackworth in place of one destroyed by some ruthless hand. April 1853. Ackworth has the most noted grave from which a body has been stolen. The gravestone, but not the resting place of Bezaleel Beckworth. He was disinterred in 1824. Old Bezaleel's remains were sold to the medical college in Castleton, Vermont. But you know, there's another body, a second body, that was stolen from the grave that same night of that same year, and that body was also taken to the medical college at Castleton, Vermont, where it was sold. And although the second victim died around the same time as Bezaleel Beckworth, and the body was dug up the same night, Halloween, it was not sold at the same time. In fact, it may have been as much as a month later before the transaction was made. The second corpse was that of Mary Hilton, 72 years old, a housewife, lived and died in Andover, New Hampshire. She died 2 weeks before Bezaleel, but her body was stolen from the grave the same night. Mary was disinterred by a young man named Zenas Johnson, who lived in Salisbury with his brother-in-law, who was the physician there. Zenas was interning with him. He was still a student, by the way, at Castleton. Anyhow, around Halloween, he took a wagon and left town for a couple of days, came back, said he was visiting relatives over here in the town of Westmoreland. The local police, they were having none of it, and they took the young medical student to court. The boy's legal team was headed by Ezekiel Webster, Daniel Webster's brother, and Zeke got him off. The jury found there was not enough time for that wagon to have gone all the way to Castleton, Vermont, and get back in the time that young Zenas was gone, and so he was free, not guilty. He went back being a student, got his medical degree, became a doctor in 1826, moved to Canada. It is now considered probable that young Zenas Johnson did visit his relatives in Westmoreland, and that he had with him the body of Mrs. Hilton. And that body was preserved in an oak barrel filled with brine. She was pickled, and the body was later sold to the medical college, brought it over in the barrel. As for Mary Hilton's grave there in Andover at the cemetery, it looks just like the others in her family around it, except the tombstone down at the bottom, incised in very small letters, it says, "Body stolen after burial," it says. Geez, and then pickled. In the 1770s, a housewife living in Ware was said to be a witch. Rhoda Petty Dustin, wife of Colonel William Dustin, was and still is, in fact, called the Great Witch of Ware. Her husband ran the tavern in South Ware. The couple had 9 children. The colonel died in 1740. It was after his death that she gained the reputation of sorcery. People crossed the road so as not to pass the Great Witch. She was old and hag-like and fearsome. If a cow dried up, it was Rhoda Dustin's fault. If a hen stopped laying, it was her influence. She had the evil eye. The Ware history tells us about a neighbor of Witch Dustin, a young man named Reuben Favor. Reuben lived on Barnard Hill. He was young and strong, but one day he couldn't get up. Was bedridden. Reuben's farm was within sight of Dustin's tavern, so the family knew Reuben's sickness must be the work of the Great Witch, and so they determined to kill her. To kill a witch, the town history says, somebody has to boil the urine of the cursed person. And this was done. The entire family gathered around the fireplace and watched as the pot boiled. The ritual required everybody be absolutely silent, but somebody did make a sound, and the history says this broke the ritual, and the witch did not die. It was then that Reuben's father took a great axe and, with a number of neighbors, went to Mrs. Dustin and told her that she must stop tormenting Reuben, or that he, that is the father, would kill her. Mrs. Dustin was scared to death. No arguing. She, in fact, promised if she had anything to do with Reuben's sickness, she would stop it. And Reuben's father then went home, and within a week, his son was up and cured of whatever ailment he had suffered. The Ware town history says that Mrs. Dustin suffered torment to the day she died, and she was actually a very nice person, if slightly mad and unkempt. She talked to herself when she walked. Still, to this day, she is called the Great Witch of Ware. So, if you come home some night and say to your husband, "What's that smell?" beware. Yes, there are ghosts in this graveyard. Here a body was stolen from the grave and sold to be dissected. A man who in fact died on Halloween. In this yard are interred a father and 4 small children,
all who died of the spotted fever. Many other children lie here as well. Here is a man killed by a falling tree, and a man who died in church on his knees while taking communion. And a young woman who was struck by lightning lies beside her brother, who died within a month of her passing. They share a tombstone. Oh yes, there are ghosts here. They whisper to you, they beckon you. Come and lie with us, they say. Come and lie with us, they say.